Hi, this is Joyce Farrell. I want to talk about using parallel arrays. What are parallel arrays? Well, parallel arrays occur when you have two or more arrays in memory, and they're parallel when the data in each element of one array logically corresponds to the data in the same relative position in the second array. For example, suppose you have 4 employees with different ID numbers and different names, and you want to be able to write a program where a user can input the ID number and output the correct name. You would start by declaring an array of ID numbers as follows: numeric ID number, 4 of them, and then list them. In memory, the ID numbers would look like this. Then you declare an array of names, and in memory, they'd look like this. You'd need a few other variables, a numeric subscript used to cycle through the array looking for the correct ID number, a user entry where the user will type in the ID number that we're looking for, and a found name where we're going to store the correct name when we find it. For right now, it's going to say not found. When you start the program, the subscript is set to 0. Then you input the user's entry. Let's assume the user types in 172. You compare the subscript to 4 to make sure you've not gone past the end of the array, and the subscript is 0, so it is less than 4. And then you compare the user's entry, 172, with the ID number at position 0, which is 121. They're not equal, so we'll end the if statement and wait until later to show what we do when they are equal. Then add 1 to the subscript so it's 1, and you reach the end of the body of the loop. You return to the top and compare the subscript to 4. It's less, so you compare the user's entry, 172, with the ID number in position 1, which is 135. They're not equal, so the if statement ends, and you add 1 more to sub, so sub is now 2. The loop is at the end, and you compare the subscript to 4 again. You're still within range, so the loop continues. When you compare the user entry, 172, with ID number 2, this time they're equal. So, in the found name, you store the name at position 2 in the name array. The arrays are parallel because the ID number at position 2 in one array corresponds to the name in position 2 in the other array. Then you end the if statement, add 1 to the subscript, reach the bottom of the loop, compare the subscript to 4, it is still less, so you compare 189 and 172. They're not equal, so the if statement ends, you increase the subscript, it's the end of the while loop. Now, when you compare sub to 4, it's not less than 4, so the loop is over. You continue then to output the ID number, the user entry, which is 172, and the found name that goes with the user entry, Carl. You've successfully found the right name with the ID number that was entered. Now, if the array had had 100 elements instead of only 4, the loop would have continued for a long while after you found ID number 172. You can make the loop a little more efficient by exiting as soon as you find the correct name. So let's start over. Let's make the loop efficient by changing the while statement to not only to compare the sub to 4, but also to compare the found name to not found. While it still says not found, you want to keep going. Let's wipe everything out and start over. Wipe out the subscript in the user entry and set found name back to not found. This time when the code starts, you can set sub to 0. Let's say the user enters 121. Compare sub to 4, it is less than 4, and compare found name to not found, it is not found. So enter the loop and compare the user entry to ID number 0. 121 is 121, so you can take found name and set it to name 0. Found name becomes Ann. That's the end of the if statement, and sub becomes 1. That's the end of the loop, so you go back to the top. Sub is less than 4, but found name is not found. foundName is now Ann. So the while loop is over. It's not going to execute anymore. You can output the ID number 121 and the foundName Ann. By getting out of the loop early when foundName no longer was not found, you saved a lot of time. Thanks for watching.